Hello everyone, I'm Jacob Kaufman with NerdOnTheStreet.com, and this is your Nerd on the Street news for the week of August 23rd, 2015. Let's get right into it this week. There's some rumors that Opera might be considering selling its browser. Opera has always had a relatively small presence in the browser space. It's never been as popular as Firefox or Chrome, but there is still a group of users very dedicated to that browser, and it's good to have a third option available for people who are looking for a multi-platform browser. Now, Opera doesn't actually profit off of its browser, it profits off of its advertising business. And so when Opera Software, the company that makes the Opera browser, took a look at its revenue from last quarter, it was underwhelmed, and as a result of that, it makes sense that Opera might try and sell off its browser so it doesn't have to deal with developing that anymore. If you're not aware, at this point, Opera is based off of Chromium, so it's not like they're maintaining an entire browser engine, but they do have a syncing service, and they do make a browser for all major platforms. So it would be very interesting to see what another company could do with Opera, if another company would want to maybe increase Opera's market share, or if Opera might eventually end up shutting down altogether. The browser, that is. Once again, the advertising business is doing just fine. They're just not doing as well as they thought they would be at this point in the year. So if you use Opera, or if you're interested in Opera, then you might want to keep an eye on that. Spotify published a new privacy policy last week, and it is super creepy. And for some reason, people chose to actually call them out on it. I know a lot of times privacy policies are creepy and nobody really gives a crap, but Spotify, the music sharing service, recently requested access to certain parts of phones. Specifically, the app wants to access your phone's sensor data, photos, contacts, location, and voice controls. Presumably that's on either iPhone or Android. Spotify has apps for both. And people are now asking, why would a streaming music app need access to my photos, my contacts, my location? Why would a music app need access to any of that stuff? Of course, Spotify uses the usual excuse of customizing your experience. When the CEO of Spotify was first tweeted on the matter, he got defensive about the new policies, but Spotify's HR is now out there and they are trying to repair the damage. In fact, the CEO, Daniel Ek, says, "Let me be crystal clear here, if you don't want to share this kind of information, you don't have to." So it looks like even though the Spotify app requests access to those controls, it might not actually use the things it gets from those controls unless you give it permission to. This is sort of a problem with the way that phone app permissions are set up. You right now have to grant an app all of the permissions it could possibly ever need when you install the app. This is the kind of thing that we're hoping will be resolved with Android M. Android M, the next version of Android, won't make you accept all of those permissions right away. Android M will let you accept or deny those permissions as the app needs them. The European courts are getting a little recursive with their orders to Google. Earlier this year, the European Union decided that everyone has the right to be forgotten. And if you live in the European Union and you want search results tied to your name to be removed from Google, Google has to comply with that request. Well, the United Kingdom Information Commissioner's Office has now ordered Google to remove links from its search results that point to news stories reporting on removals of links from its search results. So if Google is ordered to take down an article, and then there's an article about Google taking down that article, Google cannot index the article about Google indexing the first article and then taking it down. Yeah, it's a little silly, and it kind of makes you wonder, where does it end? What if someone makes an article about Google removing the article about Google removing the original article? Does Google have to take that down? Is there any specific information that makes the article prone to being taken down, or is Google just kind of stuck trying to remove all evidence whatsoever? Certainly very interesting to see, and the story is moving quick. Google has 35 days to comply with the enforcement notice. If it does not, it could be charged a significant fee. And if they don't pay that fee, then that is a criminal offense in the United Kingdom. So yeah, if Google wants to appeal against one of those orders, then they can appeal that to the Information Tribunal, which is part of the United Kingdom's court system called the General Regulatory Chamber. So if you really want to disappear from the face of the earth and you don't want to be indexed by Google anymore, you might want to move to Europe. Apple has launched a program to replace faulty iPhone 6 Plus cameras. Only the iPhone 6 Plus is affected, the regular old 6 is not affected, and experts think that that might be because the iPhone 6 Plus has a camera with an optical image stabilizer in it. So people are suspecting that that optical image stabilization is what's causing the problems in the camera. Only a very small percentage of phones sold between September 2014 and January 2015 are affected, but if you do have one of those affected phones, you could be seeing some blurry photos. If you're having that issue, you can head to the problem page linked in the article that will be linked to in the description of this video, and you can enter your serial number and Apple will check if your phone is in fact affected, and if it is, you can take it to an Apple authorized service provider or a good old Apple store. Before you do that, Apple is warning users to back up their data to iTunes or iCloud before having their phone serviced, so your phone is probably going to be wiped or replaced outright while it's being repaired. Apple Music is not catching on very well. According to a recent survey conducted by Music Watch, only about 1 in 10 owners of an iOS device are currently using Apple Music. Lots more people have tried using Apple Music, but only about half of the people who sign up for the free trial end up signing up for the full service afterwards. Now, Apple disputed Music Watch's numbers. Apple themselves came out and said that 79% of people who have signed up for Apple Music continue to use the service, and I think it's safe to say that Apple's statistics might be a little more reliable in this situation. But still, considering how big of a deal Apple made Apple Music out to be, only having about an 11% adoption rate is kind of disappointing. Experts aren't sure if that's signaling that people aren't interested in streaming music, or if Apple is just doing a bad job at advertising and presenting Apple Music. Music Watch was also surprised at how few people have even signed up for the free trial, but that's not very surprising considering Apple makes you put your credit card in when you sign up for that trial, and if you don't cancel the trial, you're automatically charged at the end of that 3 months. Considering how many iOS devices are out there, I think that Apple could be doing a lot worse than 10%, but we'll have to wait and see what they do to try and increase that adoption rate in the next few months. A lightning storm recently caused data loss at a Google data center in Belgium. Guess they should have used a surge protector. The problem was caused by 4 successive lightning strikes, and it resulted in unrecoverable data. The amount of data from that data center that was affected was 0.00001%. And even with that tiny amount, Google still says that that kind of a loss is unacceptable. Google is currently working on figuring out why that problem occurred there and how they can prevent it from happening in the future. After the lightning strikes on August 13th, the storage systems weren't fully operational again for 5 days. Even though it was caused by lightning, Google takes full responsibility for the event. And Google is now looking at implementing policy changes such as switching to generator power as soon as a lightning storm is reported in the area, rather than when actual power is actually knocked out. Just in case you were wondering, the users who were affected were probably using the Google Compute Engine, which lets users create and run virtual machines. I talked earlier this year about how HP was planning on splitting into 2 separate companies, and I joked that those separate companies should be called Hewlett and Packard. They're not. One of the companies is called HP Inc., and the other is called HP Enterprise. And the split has now been made, if not legally, then at least in practice. HP doesn't officially become 2 companies until November 1st, but at the beginning of this month, HP shut down all of its internal operations for 3 days, and the company separated its internal systems. It is now operating as 2 businesses. Just as a quick recap from last time I talked about this, HP Inc. will sell PCs and printers to the general public, while HP Enterprise will sell servers, storage gear, network gear, and enterprise software to large companies. HP's revenues have been declining for the past 4 years, and it's not hard to see why. I mean, we're all moving toward mobile devices, and Windows is also losing a lot of market share. There was a brief period last year when HP's future was looking well. That was when Windows XP support was cut off and a lot of businesses rushed to buy upgraded systems. But PC sales are now in deep decline again, and HP does not expect anything to get better soon. So by separating into 2 separate companies, they are hoping that they will be able to focus in better on what they're trying to do. HP Inc. will be focusing on the personal computer market, if it's still there at all, and then HP Enterprise will be focusing on, once again, serving large businesses who are using lots and lots of computers, and they are also providing things like cloud services. So the enterprise side is probably going to fare better. With developers for Firefox dwindling, Mozilla is pushing for a multi-browser plugin API. The new API will make it easier for Chrome, Opera, and Edge extension developers to create versions of their extensions for Firefox. I don't think there are very many Edge developers out there yet. So Firefox has always been using its own plugin system, its own plugin programming language that it's used. And it's been a big deal, and it's been really successful in previous years. It's been really successful in the years between 2000 and 2010. Those were the years when browser plugins really mattered a lot. Now, I don't know about any of you, but I personally don't use any browser plugins whatsoever. I use whatever features the browser comes with, because I reinstall my operating system and therefore my browser way too often to consistently use extensions. And also, every time I go to install an extension, the extension, similar to an Android app, it asks for access to my browsing history, my bookmarks, and this and that, and I don't want to give a third-party access to all of those things. So personally, I kind of think that browser plugins are dead. But Mozilla feels differently. They have announced this new API, it's called Web Extensions, and it's going to be Blink compatible. And that's important because Blink is the rendering engine that Chrome uses and Opera uses because Opera is based off of Chromium. Microsoft Edge does not yet support add-ons, but when it does, it will reportedly support the same extensions that run in Chrome right now. So developers should be able to write one plugin and modify it just a little bit, and it should be able to run on Chrome, Firefox, Opera, and Microsoft Edge. And that should cover all of the major browsers other than Safari, because if we're counting Edge, then I guess we should count Safari. So if you're someone who uses plugins a lot and you wanted there to be greater consistency across browsers, then you're in luck. A preview of the new Web Extensions API is now available in developer version 42 of Firefox. This month, Samsung released its new Galaxy S lineup, and all of their new stuff are available except for their Galaxy S2 tablets, which are still available in South Korea, but not available here, which makes me kind of irked. But Samsung is currently selling Galaxy S5s and Galaxy Note 6s? Is that what the version numbers are at this point? Yeah, Galaxy Note 5, Galaxy S6 Edge, and Galaxy S6 Edge Plus. All of those phones Samsung is selling here in the United States, and if you're an iPhone user in the United States, you can now test drive a Galaxy smartphone for 30 days, and you'll only have to pay $1 to do it. Samsung is hoping to make a dent in Apple's market, and they're taking advantage of the fact that Apple has not released their newest iPhones yet. Apple's expected to update the iPhone lineup later this year. But for right now, the problem with Android, as Samsung sees it, is a lot of iPhone users just say, oh, this is an iPhone. This is what I've always used. This is what I have to have. And they don't ever think about trying the competition. So Samsung is trying to make it easy for iPhone users to try the competition, try out an Android phone, risk-free for 30 days. Samsung's phones are some of the nicest phones around. Not the absolute nicest phones, but some of the nicest Android phones around. If you do want to take a test drive, you can choose between those three phones, the Note 5, the S6 Edge, or the S6 Edge Plus, and you can use that with any carrier. After that month is up, you can either return it, or you can just upgrade to that specific phone that you've been using if you want to. Right now, this test drive is only offered in the United States. There is no word on if this is going to be offered in Europe yet. Alright, it has begun. Microsoft forced its first update last week. If you use Windows 10, your PC shut down and restarted last week to install a Windows 10 update. And I say that with 100% certainty if you had your computer turned on at the time, because Microsoft is no longer allowing users to postpone updates. Now, I see that as a problem. Personally, I don't want my computer doing something that I don't want it to do. If I don't want it to install an update, I should be able to tell it not to install that update. But apparently, the way I think is called being paranoid, and reasonable people are okay with this. So just make sure you save your work every night, just in case Microsoft decides to roll out an update. It's worth pointing out that since I had my computer booted into Linux, I have not, in fact, downloaded the update yet. And that's all of the news for this week, but if you'll recall, in Nerd on the Street News Season 1, I used to like to pick one sort of fun article to throw in every week. And this week I found one that just seems right. Artificial intelligence, legal responsibility, and civil rights. This TechCrunch article, basically, it doesn't really say anything mind-blowing. Probably nothing that you haven't thought about before. But it's just discussing, if a robot is able to make decisions on its own, and it commits a crime, who committed that crime? Who is responsible for that robot? And how do we determine if the robot is responsible for itself? How do we determine if machines are self-aware? Normally for this fun article, I pick something a little more practical, like a tutorial or a review or something like that. But I wanted to throw this in because we are starting Displaced Season 2 work this week, and Displaced is an original machinima series over on the Nerd on the Street Entertainment channel, and given that there is at least one artificial intelligence character in the world of Displaced, I thought Displaced fans might be interested in reading this article. Just a nice little tie-in there. So that's all of the news you might have missed this week. If there's anything that I missed, feel free to leave it in the comments section below, or even better, go to our website, nerdonthestreet.com. In fact, in the description of this video, there will be a link to the feedback thread for this show, the specific episode, and you can find the links to all of the articles I talked about, and you can also respond with comments about any of these articles. If you want to submit any articles for me to talk about next week, then you can also go to that nerdonthestreet.com forum. It's called NOTS News, Nerd on the Street News, and you can go in there and just submit a forum post with whatever news you think deserves to be talked about on this show. So that is all for this week, and I hope to see you next week. I'm Jacob Kaufman with nerdonthestreet.com, and I will see you guys later. Bye.